Hello and welcome to another episode of the SLB roster breakdown. This time we are looking at the Bristol Flyers. It's Louis and Grant again. And yeah, this is number 7 of these videos. Thanks to everyone who's got involved so far, like, sharing and subscribing on the channel. We are over 100 subscribers, so thank you for doing that. Get into, obviously, the Bristol Flyers. They finished in 7th place last season. And it's a really interesting kind of roster makeup they've got this season. Lots of changes. They've brought in Cam Holden from Cheshire Phoenix. So you know what? Let's start with Cam. This is a really interesting pickup for them in terms of what should we expect. And maybe this is his 3rd season in the league. He did 2 at Cheshire. So yeah, what do you make of Cam Holden joining the Bristol Flyers?
I think it's really exciting, because I mean, what's kind of Kapulis's kind of calling cards? Like, he loves energy players. He loves players that, play hard for him, defensively versatile players who, are strong defensively. Cam kind of ticks all those boxes, in terms of energy. Like last season's, in the top 5 for offensive rebounds, for instance, is his game. Like, he's been playing at Cheshire. Bristol like to play kind of fast, decently fast. So he has experience in a fast kind of up-tempo system. We'll touch on this later with some of the other players that they've recruited, but I think they've recruited a roster that kind of work really well off of him. For instance, Zach Anderson is an excellent, really quick shooter at the 4 spot. You think about what Cam Holden really does well is kind of, as a primary handler, he loves to kind of like Barkley into post-ups, or get into post-ups on on one of the blocks, and kind of loves to fire like skip passes to the opposite corner. Like, imagine like Zach Anderson, for instance, firing from 3. He's a lights out shooter, like quick shooter. They have Joe Anderson at the 1 spot, who's an excellent off-ball shooter. So a lot of kind of players that work well. And I mean, we know what Cam Holden does, so it's just how kind of Kapulis fits him in the scheme, and kind of, how it works. So.
Another one you kind of began talking about there was obviously Zach Anderson, the 6'7", 4-man, shooting 4-man from George Mason. Like, watching some of his highlights, you're right. He loves to shoot that 3, but actually cuts really well off the back to the basket, sorry. And that's where I think you're right about Cam Holden. If he's penetrating in, he's going to have that off pass to a cutting Anderson or an Anderson in the corner. They could really be an exciting link-up.
Yeah, so Zach Anderson, exceptional kind of off-ball shooter. Like, his shot is just so quick. He's got like a one-motion kind of fluid shot. He played at George Mason last season, and defensively, in terms of defensive rating, they had one of the best defensive ratings in the entirety of D1. They played a really aggressive scheme, like what Kapulis wants to do. He likes, switchable kind of guys. He obviously at the 4 spot last season, they had
Kendall Lewis.
Name, Grant? Kendall Lewis. They had Kendall Lewis, and he was like, Zach Anderson's very long. He in terms of steals and block rates, he had 2% on both. And in terms of like recruitment metrics, in terms of if you're looking at advanced stats, that kind of indicates a good level of defensive athleticism, and he is, very versatile. Interesting thing with Zach is kind of at Florida Gulf Coast in the college previous, he played a lot of point forward. Like, they've recruited a lot of players, Cam Holden, like Milos Dugalic, who kind of who have really good size. And, Cam Holden, if he wasn't handling as much or elsewhere, he's played at the 4 spot. Milos Dugalic is sometimes played at the 5 spot, which is ridiculous. But they've recruited a lot of kind of handling, which is interesting. Zach Anderson's got a decent kind of catch, kind of straight line handle. He's got a decent kind of cross, attacking, downhill. He's not too quick. In terms of as a slasher, he's not that dangerous. But yeah, he's kind of, as a finisher, he's a little bit, well, not a little bit, he's pretty bad, to be frank. He shot like low 40% at the rim, he's got a decent mid-range shot if he does get to it. Yeah, like from free, he's got like if someone tries to chase him off the line or off the 3-point line, he's got like a kind of sidestep game. Yeah, he's kind of got a little bit of a post-up game too. He's decently physical and likes a post fadeaway off. Yeah, that's kind of his game. Basically, like a spot-up guy that's good defensively.
Hey, what about if we look at someone that only really announced in the last couple of days before the setup? We'll finish with Will Yoakum. Like someone that coming out of playing in Mexico, 6'5". He's a player that I think Bristol Flyers fans are going to really enjoy watching.
He's exciting, you know. Like his thing is being like a really clinical kind of spot up player, which will be interesting because I mean we project him as kind of like a 2 considering who they have elsewhere on the roster and kind of like as a traditional 2 in terms of what our league sees, because often we kind of see combo guards or more handling oriented guards. Like, I mean, Surrey's obviously got Keno Lilly at the 2, who's like 6 foot, you know, so it's an interesting dynamic, but Will is primarily like a clinical kind of spot up player. He's really, he's kind of really quick in attacking closeouts and straight line. He's quick. He kind of finishes above the rim. He's really good at kind of capitalizing at the rim, you know, when attacking closeouts, you know, quick straight line, cuts. Like he's a terrific cutter as well in terms of playing off ball. You know, that's really valuable. Terrific cutter, you know, backdoor cuts, etc. As a 3-point shooter, because in Mexico, you know, he was a 40% shooter on decent volume. We've kind of talked in the past about how, you know, Mexico's kind of like the level of play, especially in LMBP. Say that
easy
right.
For some to say.
The level of play, especially, the level of play, especially in that league, is very high. Like for instance, you know, we saw Miles Hessen in that league, but the kind of level of physicality and intensity is like it looks like a kind of low, kind of the level of effort basically. And in Pro A Germany, like I've had a discussion with a coach about him beforehand. Like in Pro A Germany, he didn't really look very kind of value adding. Kind of like he shot a decent you know 30% in Pro A Germany, where you know there's obviously a lot more defensive intensity. You know, defenders are closer to him, closer, you know, up to him, etc. You know, in terms of his handling ability, like he looks a little bit clunky in terms of kind of creating as a handler per se, as like a 2-man. Obviously they have, you know, like Joe Anderson, Cam Holden, kind of, and Darnell Brody as kind of like a post player to create. So that's not really as much as an onus in this squad, which is why in terms of specificity and like recruiting, it might be a decent ad. But in terms of kind of handling creation, that's not particularly a strength of his. But you know, clinical kind of straight line, in a clinical as a straight line driver, you know, cutter, etc., and can shoot the free decently well. So yeah,
let's look at the point guard. Joe Anderson coming from Lipscomb, same college that Owen McCormack came from, 6-foot guard, as you can already say, pretty quick, good defender. But what else should we expect from Joe Anderson?
Well, very good 3-point shooter. If he gets space, kind of like as a handler in the pick and roll, if he gets space behind the screen, you know, off the dribble, because he's got like a one motion shot, you know, he's very quick to get it up. Like some of the other guys I've spoke about in this kind of series, like Mike Mitchell, he's good at operating off ball and kind of relocating off of his passes. You know, when he does act as a playmaker, good at operating off ball, off screens, kind of, he's really good. He's slippery, like in handoff situations, he likes to fake the defenses out that way, you know, stuff like that. Like a surprising thing is kind of his, like when I was watching him, like I wasn't kind of really expecting this, but his level of agility is kind of like at handler and kind of speed level of shiftiness as like a handler. Creating looks of his handle he's in terms of creating his own looks with his handle, he's not too great. Like he is, because his frame is like, he's got kind of like a negative wingspan. He's like 6 foot, but probably with like a 5'10" or 5'11" wingspan. He's pretty small, like probably like 170 pounds per se. So in terms of physicality and bumping off players, that's not something that's going to happen, you know. So in terms of space creation for himself, that's kind of an issue. But in terms of creating advantages and like passing, he's a really good passer. You know, his kind of assist kind of percentages and kind of assists per game wasn't really standout. But like in terms of one-handed passes, either hand, you know, in terms of, he's really quick at just firing.
Yeah, and you saw that in a lot of his videos,
really
in terms of that quick passing inside. You can imagine someone like a Darnell Brodie, really that link up being really important for them. Because of the way he was, it was really quick inside, in the way that, I suppose we'll touch on Brodie in a second, but to me he looks like that type of player that likes to rock the rim, and you wonder if that link up with Joe Anderson is going to be really good.
Yeah, because he, like, in terms of hitting the roller, like, he's got a variety of passes. It's like, it'll be really fun to watch. And, you know, in kind of like another thing of his is kind of scoring at the rim, but obviously with his physicality and kind of height, he was efficient in college, but that's kind of like a question mark I have, whether that translates as well. But, and defensively as well, kind of his small frame, that's kind of a interesting question mark considering it's Bristol. But yeah, those are what I've got basically.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that on Joe Anderson. Like, there's a lot of upsides to him, but his frame, I'm curious to see how, as a guard, he adapts to the physicality of the SLB, and like, how does he do guarding or playing up against like a Tariq or a LaQuincy or who else? Mike Mitchell. Those type of guys. You wonder how that's the big question mark on Joe Anderson. I think he's got a lot of upsides. His shot's nice. His passing game's good. But what does he do against those experienced? Because this is his rookie season. It'll be interesting what he does against really experienced international or European experienced guards.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, speaking about LaQuincy, that's going to be something. That's going to be something.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the guy they most recently announced, Darnell Brodie, the 6'10". He's another one that's been in Mexico. What should we expect from him?
Yeah, kind of obviously a very physical player. He's 6'10", 270 listed at, which is huge. Kind of like a good post player that uses physicality well. Kind of has a decent kind of righty hook game. You know, like he's really good at passing. That's kind of the kind of thing I kind of took note of, is passing at the post. You know, he's quite stiff. That's kind of his downside. He's not very comfortable with his handle. So in handoff situations, that could be an issue. But his actual like passing, kind of quick, kind of just kicking out quick reads, stuff like that, you know, it is really kind of value adding. And I wasn't really expecting that, but I think it's going to be really good with, you know, all the shooters and stuff. Very good offensive rebounder. Kind of interesting because in his highlights, like, it does look like he's kind of like a rim rocker. But when you watch him play and kind of like his synergy kind of play type stats, he's not really rolling at all. He's kind of a little bit lazy. He's a little bit slow. Which is kind of
what I've just watched is a really good highlight tape that's been really well put together.
It's a very good highlight tape. It's a very good highlight tape. They have done a good job on that. He does do it if there's like an open room, but like he doesn't do it too often. He's mainly like a low post player that, you know, uses physicality. Defensively, he's kind of like he's very good in drop. He's not very versatile, which is an issue, but he's very turnover prone. That's about it.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about Milos Duglic a little bit more, but I want to talk about him in relation to the depth chart. So we're going to swap screens as we usually do, because he's one player that when he was first announced, we were a bit unsure of. He's someone who from who we've spoken to and understand, might not be the most physical or speedy that suits our league, but is versatile through positions. His shot looks okay. We've got him down as playing like a small forward, and I think he could easily play small ball 4. You've said he handles the ball a little bit, guards, point guards. What should we expect from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think in our league, I think he's more of like a. Obviously, he does handle the ball a bit, but I think offensively his value would be more as a 4, kind of because of his kind of speed advantage versus 4s versus 3s.
Okay, I'd agree with that.
If that kind of makes sense.
I could, yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. But in terms of defensive versatility, like I was watching a game against an ABA side in the ABA league, and for people that don't know, that's the Adriatic League. Partizan, think about all the big kind of Eastern European teams are in there. It's a very tough league. He was guarding a point guard from ABA, and trust me, those guys are ballers. He was guarding a point guard there, and he was doing a pretty decent job. I think it's fair to say. Speed wise, downhill, if a point guard's kind of attacking full speed, that's an issue. But he was holding up perfectly fine. He's 6'9", 210. He held up decently well against 5 men. I saw from the highlights. I didn't really see too much of kind of like him guarding 5s, but I saw like a couple that looked decent at it. But yeah, he mainly played as kind of like a handler, as kind of like a point forward, which is really interesting. He's got kind of like a so in terms of handles, he's a little bit loose with it. He's kind of like a linear kind of straight line guy. Decent speed, can kind of pass out the pick and roll decently well. Can be a little bit turnover prone, but he's kind of like a slasher looking to go direct at the rim. Hasn't really got too much of like an in between game, etc. Kind of like a big issue of his is his 3-point shooting. I mean, you said his shot is fine, but I saw a couple air balls and he shot 28%. So maybe not.
I mean, I just saw this.
Maybe not too fine.
Maybe not too fine. But
maybe not
again, possibly good video clips as usual. So good on the video editing team. But to me, he was someone that looked like. I'm curious to see how useful he becomes. I wonder if he's more going to be like. Do we see him excel more in the NBL? Maybe compared to.
I kind of think so.
Maybe than the SLB action.
I kind of I kind of think so because he's like I said, he's kind of like got a linear game. If his speed's not taking him past his man, because he isn't too creative, he hasn't got too creative a handle. That's going to be like a little bit of an issue. I mean, he can back them down, but yeah, I think he's probably a little bit more suited to the ENBL, but he's still a very interesting player. That's going to be very interesting to watch. So.
Next on, a new guy into the Bristol Flyers, I see Jonathan Brown. A lot of good kind of words or things have been said about him this summer. He's come in. I think Bristol fans will like him a lot. Yes, you look at the British or the Bristolian players that aren't coming back for Flyers, and you think, okay, Landolfi's still there, Del Pesce's come back, Old McCormick's still there, but Jonathan Brown is definitely someone I think fans of the Flyers are really going to like.
Yeah, he's an athletic kind of British combo that in terms of transition, like he's quite exciting. He's very quick. So yeah, he'll be very fun to watch in that regard. Defensively, kind of his level of athleticism and kind of strength, I assume, because he's listed at 200 pounds, 6'3", so that's a good size for our league. I'm assuming that's a lot of what kind of drew Kapoulis to him. That type of guard that, versus especially with Joe Anderson as kind of the starting guard, that provides kind of like an interesting kind of dynamic between the two. Obviously with Jonathan Brown being, very physical and larger versus Joe Anderson's kind of weaknesses per se. He's in terms of like a guard, which is why I think kind of the rotation is a little bit interesting. He did initiate a lot in college. He did play a lot of the one, but he's more so of like a kind of like a scoring oriented guy. Like as a slasher, he's looking to get to the rim, kind of pressure downhill. Yep. He does like his like if he gets space in the mid range, he does like to fire from the mid range. You know, decent in the mid range. Kind of like his kind of issue is kind of like his 3-point shooting per se is quite kind of inconsistent at that, and kind of like his decision making in terms of as a playmaker that could definitely be developed. But in terms of like a British guards in replacement to Corey Samuels, you know, rest in peace, you know, oh man. In terms of our man, you know, that's going to be a good British replacement. So, you know, I hope all the best to him. You know, so.
And I suppose we look at this roster and we've put Jonathan Brown backing up Anderson, but you can also then I could see a lot of rotations where you see Cam Holden being that point forward with Brown and Joachim all kind of playing together. Like there's a lot of variations that Capoulas could easily play with this squad. Like when you look even at going big, you could even see him going Brody or you could even see them going really small with McCormick, Anderson, Holden, Brown and Anderson. Like, I mean, there's a lot of different combinations to this roster.
I mean, Capoulas could get really free.
He really could.
Considering the offensive skill set and defensive versatility of Dugalich, Holden, you know, you could it would be. I mean, Capoulas kind of mentioned it in the media report, or whoever did it. Mentioned Dugalich is potentially playing the 2. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. But
it just highlights the versatility of the squad.
It highlights the versatility, and you could just go wild with it, you know. So I hope he does. It'd be very fun. So yeah. All
right, let's finish up as we usually do. I'm curious to see who you choose. Who is your one to watch for the Bristol Flyers?
I mean, that kind of has to be a new guy. It'd be a little bit lame if I kind of said Cam Holden, even though it's kind of like the obvious answer because he's going to be their leading guy. But I'd be really interested to see. I mean, we've seen Will Joachim kind of do well in the pre-season games. I'm not going to choose him because that's just obvious. So I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose Joe Anderson. You know, I think it's really kind of interesting considering kind of like the stats at a lower end college, but I think it'd be really interesting to see how his game kind of translates to the Europe. So
Joe Anderson is right. This has been good. This has been our Bristol Flyers breakdown of their roster. Thank you very much for joining us today. Again, we'll be back with the next one, which will probably be the Gladiators. Again, thank you for getting involved in the conversation. Give us a follow, give us a subscribe across all the different platforms. And yeah, we'll be back throughout the season as well after these are done with player interviews, coach interviews, and much, much more. So we'll see you then.